All right, so today, everyone, we wanted to take a little bit of time to introduce Lumen, talk about streamlining disk tiering in the cloud. But before we jump into it directly, I want to introduce our speakers today. So first, we have Vatsal. He's Lucidity's co-founder on the technical side. He's an engineer by profession, beginning his career with Microsoft as they created the Azure services that make up a lot of the backbone of the cloud. After that, he moved to Swiggy early on in that company's journey. And as they grew into a very large company, they were power users of AWS. And that's where Vatsal got firsthand insights into the challenges and opportunities around cloud storage from the user perspective. And so these combined experiences on both sides of the table, so to speak, prompted them to go out and find Lucidity. Second, we have myself. I'm Josh, the Director of Product Marketing here at Lucidity. So most recently from Wiz and Armor Code. My background's in product marketing for technical B2B products throughout really my whole career. So I really enjoy working with these products that solve like a deep, interesting technical problem that make people's lives easier. So let's see what we're talking about today. First, we'll spend a couple minutes on the state of cloud storage management today, why it's been historically overlooked and underserved from an optimization and management perspective. And then second, we'll give a little bit of background on AutoScaler, which is Lucidity's first product that eliminates block storage over provisioning autonomously. Just kind of set some context there as well. And then we'll spend the bulk of our time today giving an overview into our newest product, Lumen, which just launched at the beginning of June. And is helping companies around the world right now streamline their disk tiering and optimize everything around that. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. If you have any questions as we go, feel free to share them in the Q&A section. We'll answer them at the end. So to kick us off here, I'll hand it over to Vatsal. Take it away.
Right. Thanks a lot, Josh. This really helps. And guys, like Josh mentioned, while we're very excited to talk about Lumen and introduce it to all of you guys, we would first want to take a few minutes and talk about why we got into the space of cloud storage management. And we realized that this is a very complex domain. You have these cloud service providers who've done a fabulous job in providing the infrastructure layer for storage, be it block, object, or file. But on top of it, infrastructure engineers have to balance a multitude of parameters, starting from cost, performance, availability, security, or governance. This leads to multiple parameters, aspects to tune, be it their storage type, disk tiering, sizing problems, and so on and so forth. And this problem gets magnified by the fact that any large enterprise at scale has thousands of disks and hundreds of applications, and they're at least on 2 cloud providers. Now, for any individual or even a team to be able to be on top of these millions of combinations of disks, applications, cloud service providers is a virtually impossible activity. And that's what got us as an organization interested into the problem of storage management. The impact of this is also multifold. On an average, 50 to 70% of disk space is wasted. Applications are about 30% slower. At the same time, organizations are wasting hundreds of hours in manual optimization or management activities, and they still result in downtime. And the reason is very simple, that managing this is a very complex activity at scale, and there needs to be a much more autonomous system to be able to do that. Now, let me talk about a singular problem, the problem of capacity management. Now, capacity management in general is a guesstimate activity. If a typical organization would have a golden image, which would have a statically configured data disk and root disk, which is used pretty much for all the workloads. And even if they are doing some sort of configuration activity, it's a very, very challenging activity to be able to predict what the workload or the capacity usage would look like 6 months or 1 year down the line. And the worst part is that these are fairly static configurations. Expansion is manual and downtime prone. Although you could still do it, but you have to do a bunch of steps to be able to do this activity. It also impacts performance at times, which is why most organizations do not prefer to be in this situation. Inevitably, this happens whenever the workload goes beyond the capacity or is about to go beyond the capacity, and the organizations are forced to make these changes. There are constraints on the cloud service providers as well. But the bigger problem is that shrinking requires downtime. Now, even if you were to be able to identify that, hey, I need to reduce the size of this disk, it would still take you hours or days, depending on the amount of data that there is, for you to be able to shrink and to save that extra capacity that you've been running with. And that's where our first product, AutoScaler, shines. We eliminate the need for block storage over provisioning. We take the utilization from an industry average of 30% to about 75 to 80% on day one. There is no downtime with expansion. It happens in under a minute. There is performance gains, and most importantly, shrinking is an activity that does not require a downtime with us. An infrastructure engineer or a team would just start using Lucidity and forget about it. And our product is able to continuously scale up and down depending on the workload requirements. So team, that's a brief on our first product, AutoScaler, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on AutoScaler today. And we want to directly jump into the new product offering that we have, which is Lumen. Now, we've already spoken about how cloud storage management is a very complex activity. With AutoScaler, we took a stab at the disk sizing problem, wherein we went in deep, we identified what those challenges are, why are organizations facing these problems, and we have a truly no-ops solution, which organizations can onboard, apply into their workplace, and then forget about it. But when we went deep into this problem and we spoke to hundreds of enterprise customers, we realized that there are a lot more problems that modern enterprises of today are struggling with at scale. And the broader problem at hand was that they have to balance all these 5 pillars when they're managing storage, be it cost, performance, and so on and so forth. And that is how Lumen was born. The vision for Lumen is that it is providing a platform for the users to be able to balance all these automatically and be able to get the best out of the cloud service offerings. We are starting first in Lumen. We are starting with the first module of disk tiering, which will be the focus of the discussion as I talk more and share more about Lumen. Now, jumping directly into the business impact of disk tiering. Now, what's the current state, you ask? 50% of the disks are on the wrong tier. And what that means is that about 25% of disk spends are actually getting wasted. Most disks are actually over-provisioned, not just in capacity, but also in the type of disks that is being used. Azure customers are primarily using premium disks where their workloads may or may not demand that level of performance or capacity that it comes with. But at the same time, there are still downtimes that are happening because of lack of capacity. On an average, about $500,000 are getting wasted just on downtimes due to inefficient disk type or disk tierings. Now, why is this happening? The number one reason for that is lack of visibility. It's very complex to be able to identify what is the right disk type or disk tier for any workload. And the information for that is actually pretty scattered across the domain. There is some information that you would find on the cloud service providers. There is some information that you would find on the applications, and there is some that you may find with expertise. Now, even if you are able to get all this information into a single place and be able to look to make sense out of it. The performance is very unpredictable because today's workloads are very demanding. There are planned and unplanned surge in traffic, and workloads need to be equipped with enough capacity to be able to handle that. And most importantly, even if you are able to identify that you are on the wrong tier, the action needs a downtime. And that becomes a big blocker because there are thousands of disks that any organization has. And if you were to take a downtime for every single disk and save $100 or a couple of $100 on each disk, that just doesn't add up in terms of the effort. This problem is magnified by the scale at which these organizations are working at today. And that is where organizations are struggling big time in being able to balance the spends that they're doing in one place and also the downtimes that they're incurring on the other place. We've spoken about visibility. Visibility is a big challenge. Like I said, disk metrics are scattered across different portals, and CSP dashboards do lack a consolidated view. Performance needs continue to evade us, and we continue to try to figure out how to predict these better. There is a strong need for organizations to be able to get on top of this workload management and make this steering activity a lot more dynamic than what it is. The conversion comes with its own set of challenges. You have to take a VM offline, you have to reboot it again, and it's a manual multi-step process that it is arduous for a lot of organizations. And it is just virtually impossible for anyone to continue to keep these operationally intensive exercises over and over again on a repeated basis for the environment to be completely optimized. Now that's where Lucidity's Lumen comes in. We are taking on the problem of disk tearing and we are trying to simplify this. The business outcomes of Lumen are super simple. It leads to reduced spends wastage, it optimizes performance, avoids downtime, and at the end of the day, it improves the operational efficiency in a big way. How we've done this is that we've focused the product on 3 key capabilities. One is unified visibility, as I've spoken about in the past as well, that visibility is a big challenge when it comes to figuring out whether you're on the right tier or not. So we've gone through the pains and we've used the discussions that we've had with hundreds of enterprises as well as our expertise of years in cloud storage management. And we figured out what are the key metrics for any organization or any infra engineer to look at when they're trying to figure out what is the right tier. So you get all of this information on our dashboard to be able to consume it very easily and be able to make a decision. But we don't stop there. We don't want you to again consume all this information and then figure out what the right tier is. We give you very accurate data-driven recommendations as to what should be the correct tier. We typically utilize last 90 days of data, take into account the seasonality of the workloads, also the spikes and the peak and off-peak hours that have occurred in that duration. But you can also go ahead and fine-tune this if you would like to go with a more aggressive or a more conservative recommendation. But that's not it. The third and the most important part that we've solved here is that we have provided a capability for you to change the tier with a click of a button, and that too without a downtime. And that really is a game changer, because now organizations can simply plug Lumen in, get the right tiers, click a button, and then optimize their environments right then and there. The tiering activity takes just a few hours, and within that duration you're able to realize the efficiency of Lumen, and you're able to achieve a lot of optimizations on your cloud storage environment. Now let me give you guys a quick sneak peek into what the product looks like right now. This is the primary dashboard, and it provides you some very, very interesting insights. The first widget that we've showed you is the tiering efficiency. And when we talk about visibility, that's the level of easy access visibility that we're talking about, that with just a widget, you're able to understand how well is your workload optimized. Is it 70% optimized? How many disks are unoptimized, and so on and so forth? What is the potential for you to save in terms of dollars or downtime? The next widget talks about what sort of recommendations you have. It gives you an easy split of what are the different types of disk where your recommendations are split, what are the transitions that we are offering, and you could always click on the recommendations and get more details out of it. Now, coming to recommendations, like I said, you could always go deeper, identify what each recommendation for a disk is. You can also click on a recommendation, and it quickly gives you a summary of all the activities that have happened on the instance. What does the throughput look like? What does the IOPS look like? And 5 other parameters. You will also be able to simulate what would happen if you were to change a tier. If you are satisfied is when you can go ahead and take the call of changing the tier itself. Now, finally, changing the tier is a super simple activity. This requires no downtime for the user. All you have to do is click a button and you're done. But at the same time, we do provide you the capability of scheduling it in case you would like this to be done at an off-peak hour, although the performance is not impacted, but still our users prefer this to be on weekends, during the nights, and so on and so forth, and you can very easily set that up. And once you've set this up, you can forget about it. That's how simple we've tried to make Lumen. And what we're looking to do is that we give the users the visibility into what is happening in their infrastructure. We give them data-driven recommendations, but we don't want to stop at recommendation. We want to give them actions, real actual actions that can help them optimize their cloud environment. Now, together with AutoScaler and Lumen, we are able to provide a lot of value to our enterprise customers. On an average, we are able to reduce their storage spends by about 70%. That is a non-trivial amount for organization any size. The amount of effort that organizations were spending on capacity management or other challenges in storage management all goes away once Lucidity comes in. We are saving hundreds of people hours with the help of streamlined workflows, automation, and simplifying the job of storage management. And at the same time, as a free side effect, we are able to optimize the performance of the workloads that are running. You get better IOPS, you get better throughputs, and your applications in general run faster and smoother. We are application agnostic, so you can pretty much run any sort of application. We are cloud native. We work really well with the top 3 cloud service provider. We have native integrations built in with first-party services as well as with third-party services. The vision is that as an organization, you should not need to change. You should not need to learn to use a new product. We, as a product, we should be able to blend in with your infrastructure, and that's what we're trying to do. Finally, I'd like to talk about a case study of one of our marquee customers. It's a leading US airline where we have helped them accelerate their cloud migration journey. They were facing a lot of challenges when it came to storage management. There were massive block storage over provisioning, uneven utilization, and which continued to cause a lot of downtime per year. There were performance at risk, and eventually the key initiative of cloud migration was impacted. Now, with Lucidity, along with AutoScaler and Lumen, we have eliminated downtime. We have freed up their people and their resources for them to be able to focus on cloud migration efforts, and in general unblock a lot of productivity gains directly as well as indirectly within the organization. This initiative has helped them reduce a lot of human hours, wherein we have helped them automate close to 8,000 provisioning activities. We have saved them close to $1 million annually. That is a 77% ROI basis what the customer has. And at the same time, the customer has gained 4 times higher disk utilization. They were at 21% before Lucidity, and right now they're on 82%. And that just goes on to show the value that Lucidity has been able to add on some of the largest organizations globally, and which is why we love working with customers like these, and it really helps us understand how we can add value and how we can work well and help them achieve their goals.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here.